My mother-in-law moved into my house without asking, and my husband defended her. I spent 12 years building a life I was proud of, a beautiful home, 2 wonderful children, and a marriage I thought was unbreakable. I'd worked hard to create a sanctuary, a place where my family could feel safe, loved, and respected. Then my mother-in-law, Sylvia, announced she was moving in. She didn't ask. She didn't discuss it with me. She just showed up with her suitcases and took over my guest room. She criticized my cooking, undermined my parenting, and treated me like a servant in my own home. When I asked my husband, Derek, to intervene, he told me I was being dramatic and his mother needs support. The few months turned into a year. I'm trapped in my own house, my marriage is crumbling, and my mother-in-law is destroying everything I've built. I'm done being invisible in my own home. I'm done being treated like an outsider. The phone call came on a Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner for my family, Derek, our 2 children, and my mother-in-law who was visiting for the weekend. I'd been married to Derek for 12 years, and in that time, I'd learned to navigate his mother's passive-aggressive comments and subtle criticisms. I'd learned to smile when she told me my house wasn't clean enough, my cooking wasn't good enough, and my parenting wasn't strict enough. I'd learned to bite my tongue, but I never expected her to move in. Diana, Sylvia said, her voice smooth as silk, I've decided to sell my house. The market is good, and I think it's time for a change. I'll be moving in with you and Derek next month. I dropped the knife I was holding. It clattered against the counter, and I stared at the phone, my mind reeling. Moving in? Sylvia, you never— I've already discussed it with Derek, she said, cutting me off. He's thrilled. He said it would be wonderful to have me closer. You don't mind, do you? I felt the blood drain from my face. Sylvia, we don't have space. The guest room is small, and the guest room will be perfect, she said, her voice firm. I don't need much space. I just need to be near my family. Can I talk to Derek about this? I asked, my voice trembling. He's already agreed, she said. It's settled. I'll see you in a few weeks. She hung up before I could respond. I stood in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding. Sylvia was moving in. She'd already discussed it with Derek. He hadn't mentioned a word to me. When Derek came home that evening, I confronted him. Your mother called, I said, my voice shaking. She said she's moving in with us. Derek nodded as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Oh yeah, she mentioned that. I think it's a great idea. She's getting older and she needs to be closer to family. Closer to family? I repeated, incredulous. Derek, she lives 3 hours away. She's not on her deathbed. She's perfectly healthy. She's lonely, Diana. She's been living alone for years and she's been struggling. I told her she could stay with us for a while. A while? I said, my voice rising. She said she's selling her house, Derek. That doesn't sound like a while. That sounds like forever. Derek sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Diana, you're overreacting. She's my mother. She needs our support. It's only temporary. Temporary? I repeated. She's selling her house. That's not temporary. That's permanent. Diana, please, Derek said, his voice hardening. I've already told her she can come. I'm not going to go back on my word. She's my mother. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but I just stood there, feeling the familiar sting of being dismissed, of having my feelings ignored. I'd spent 12 years being the understanding wife, the one who always gave in. And now I was being asked to give in again. Sylvia arrived a few weeks later. She showed up with her suitcases, her boxes, and an air of entitlement that made my skin crawl. She took over the guest room, rearranging the furniture to her liking, hanging her own pictures on the walls. She commented on every aspect of my home. The color of the curtains, the placement of the sofa, the way I organized the kitchen. You really should use more natural light in here, she said, gesturing to the living room. It's so dark. And this rug, it doesn't go with anything. I gritted my teeth and said nothing. I'd learned that arguing with Sylvia was pointless. She was always right, and I was always wrong. But the real nightmare began when she started interfering with my parenting. She'd contradict my rules, undermine my authority, and tell my children that grandma knows best. When I asked her to stop, she'd smile and say, I'm just trying to help, dear. I tried to talk to Derek about it. Your mother is undermining me in front of the kids. She's making me feel like I'm not their mother. Derek shrugged. She's just trying to help. She loves the kids. You should be grateful. Grateful? I said, my voice rising. She's taking over my home, Derek. She's criticizing everything I do, and you're just letting it happen. Diana, you're being dramatic, he said. She's my mother. She's going through a difficult time. You need to be more understanding. More understanding. I'd been understanding for 12 years. I'd been patient, kind, and accommodating. And now I was being asked to sacrifice my home, my peace, and my sanity for a woman who would never be satisfied. The weeks turned into months. Sylvia showed no signs of leaving. She'd made herself at home, rearranging my kitchen, redecorating my living room, and treating me like a guest in my own house. She'd stopped asking and started telling. She'd stopped suggesting and started demanding. I started to withdraw. I spent more time at work, more time in my room, more time away from my own home. I stopped cooking, stopped decorating, stopped caring. I was a ghost in my own house and no one seemed to notice. One evening, I came home to find Sylvia in my kitchen, wearing my apron, making dinner. She'd taken over my role as cook, my role as hostess, my role as the woman of the house. Don't worry, dear, she said, smiling sweetly. I've got everything under control. You can just sit down and relax. I looked at her, standing in my kitchen, wearing my apron, and I felt something inside me snap. I'd been patient for too long. I'd been understanding for too long. I'd been invisible for too long. Sylvia, I said, my voice cold. I need you to leave my kitchen. Now. She looked up, her expression one of surprise. Excuse me? I said, leave my kitchen. I'll be making dinner tonight. For my family? Sylvia's smile faltered. She set down the spoon she was holding and walked out of the room without a word. I stood in my kitchen, alone, and let myself feel the weight of what I'd just done. I'd finally stood up for myself. I'd finally set a boundary, and I knew it was just the beginning. The aftermath of my confrontation with Sylvia was immediate and explosive. She retreated to the guest room and didn't come out for the rest of the evening. I could hear her on the phone, her voice muffled but unmistakably angry. She was calling Derek. She was calling her friends. She was telling everyone how I'd attacked her in her own home. Never mind that it was my home, my kitchen, my apron. When Derek came home that night, his face was tight with anger. He walked into the kitchen where I was cleaning up after dinner and stood in front of me with his arms crossed. Mom called me, he said, his voice cold. She told me what you did. What I did? I repeated, incredulous. She was in my kitchen wearing my apron, making dinner like she owned the place. I asked her to leave. That's all I did. Diana, she's my mother. She was trying to help. She was trying to do something nice for you. Nice? I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. She's been criticizing everything I do for months. She's been undermining my parenting, rearranging my house, and treating me like a servant. And you think she was trying to be nice? Diana, you're being dramatic, Derek said, his voice rising. She's just trying to adjust to her new life. She's been through a lot. I've been through a lot too, I said, my voice shaking. I've been through a lot of her passive-aggressive comments. I've been through a lot of her interference. I've been through a lot of you not standing up for me. Derek was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, but no less defensive. She's my mother, Diana. I can't just kick her out. I'm not asking you to kick her out, I said. I'm asking you to set some boundaries. I'm asking you to support me. I'm asking you to be my partner. He didn't respond. He just turned and walked away. The next morning, Sylvia emerged from the guest room with a triumphant smile. She'd won. She knew it. And she was going to make sure I knew it too. I'm sorry about last night, dear, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I was just trying to help. I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just walked past her and went to work. Over the next few weeks, the tension in the house became unbearable. Sylvia continued her passive-aggressive campaign, and Derek continued to defend her. I started sleeping in the guest room, the one Sylvia wasn't using, because I couldn't bear to be near him. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Morrison was patient and kind, helping me untangle the mess of emotions I was carrying. You're being gaslit, she said one afternoon. Your husband and his mother are making you feel like you're the problem, but you're not. You're a woman who's been disrespected in her own home, and you're finally standing up for yourself. But what if I am the problem? I asked, tears streaming down my face. What if I'm being too dramatic? What if I'm overreacting? Those are the questions they've planted in your head, Dr. Morrison said gently. They've made you doubt yourself, but listen to your instincts. You know what's happening. You know it's wrong. I started to set boundaries, small ones at first. I stopped cooking for Sylvia. I stopped cleaning up after her. I stopped engaging in her passive-aggressive games. I focused on my children, my work, and my own well-being. But Sylvia wasn't going to give up so easily. She started recruiting allies. She called Derek's siblings, telling them how I was mistreating her. She called her friends, telling them how I was pushing her out. She even called my mother, telling her I'd changed and wasn't the same person. My mother called me, her voice heavy with concern. Diana, Sylvia called me. She said you've been really cold to her. Is everything okay? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell my mother the truth, that Sylvia was a manipulative liar, that she'd been making my life miserable for months, that she was destroying my marriage. But I didn't. I just said, everything's fine, Mom. Don't worry about it. I didn't tell her the truth because I didn't want to burden her. I didn't tell her the truth because I didn't think she'd believe me. My mother had always liked Sylvia. They'd been friends for years. I felt like I was drowning. I was surrounded by people who didn't see me, who didn't hear me, who didn't care about my pain. I was alone in my own life. Then one evening, I came home to find Sylvia in my living room, surrounded by her friends. She'd thrown a party in my house. Without asking. Surprise, she said, her voice bright and cheerful. I decided to have a little get-together. I hope you don't mind. I stood in the doorway, staring at the scene in front of me. There were at least 20 people in my living room. Strangers, neighbors, friends of Sylvia's. They were eating my food, drinking my wine, and laughing like they owned the place. I walked up to Sylvia, my voice low and steady. Get them out. Now. Sylvia's smile faltered. Excuse me? You heard me. These people are in my house without my permission. You didn't ask me. You didn't tell me. You just did it. Get them out. Diana, I'm your guest, Sylvia said, her voice sharpening. You can't treat me like this. You're not a guest, I said. You're a squatter. And I want you out. I turned to her friends, raising my voice. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to leave. This party is over. The room went silent. People started gathering their things, murmuring apologies. Sylvia stood in the middle of the chaos, her face flushed with fury. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'll make sure you regret this. I didn't respond. I just watched her friends file out of my house one by one until I was alone in my living room with the mess they'd left behind. I sat down on the couch and started to cry. I'd won the battle, but I knew the war was far from over. The morning after the party, the house was eerily quiet. Sylvia had retreated to the guest room and hadn't emerged. Derek had come home late and gone straight to bed without speaking to me. The silence was deafening, but it was also strangely peaceful. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for months, and I was finally starting to exhale. I went to work that day, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. I'd been waiting for Derek to stand up for me, to choose me over his mother. But I realized I couldn't keep waiting. I had to make a choice for myself. That evening, I sat Derek down at the kitchen table. No kids, no interruptions, no distractions. Just the two of us and the weight of everything unsaid between us. "Derek," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." He looked at me, his expression guarded. "About what?" "About your mother, about us, about what's happening to our marriage," he sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Diana, I know you're upset about the party." I talked to her. She said she was sorry. "She's not sorry," I said. "She's never sorry. She's been manipulating you for months and you can't even see it." "Diana, let me finish," I said, holding up my hand. "I've been patient. I've been understanding. I've been the good wife who always puts everyone else first. But I'm done. I can't keep living like this. Your mother is destroying our marriage and you're letting her." Derek was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to choose," I said. "Choose me. Choose our family or choose her. But you can't keep choosing both." He looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Diana, I love you. I love our family, but she's my mother. I can't just abandon her." "I'm not asking you to abandon her," I said. "I'm asking you to set boundaries. I'm asking you to support me. I'm asking you to be my partner." He was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll talk to her. I'll tell her she needs to find another place to live." "Thank you," I said, feeling a flicker of hope. The conversation with Sylvia was not easy. Derek sat her down in the living room, his voice hesitant but firm. "Mom, I think it's time for you to find your own place. We love having you here, but it's time for you to be independent again." Sylvia's face crumpled. "You're kicking me out after everything I've done for you?" "Mom, I'm not kicking you out. I'm just saying it's time for you to move on. We can help you find a place. We can support you, but you can't keep living here forever." Sylvia turned to me, her eyes blazing. "This is your doing. You've turned my son against me. You're destroying this family." "No, Sylvia," I said, my voice calm. "You're destroying it. You've been trying to push me out of my own home for months, and I'm not going to let you." She stood up, her face flushed with fury. "Fine, I'll leave, but I'll never forgive you for this." She stormed out of the room and I heard her door slam. The next few weeks were tense. Sylvia packed her things, found an apartment nearby, and moved out. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't thank us for anything. She just left. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I felt sad. Sad for the family we'd lost. Sad for the relationship that could have been. Sad for Derek, who was caught between his wife and his mother. Derek and I started therapy. It was painful and awkward, but it was also necessary. We talked about everything. The years of neglect, the resentment, the pain. We started to rebuild our marriage, piece by piece. I also started to heal. I reclaimed my home, my kitchen, my life. I redecorated the guest room, the one Sylvia had taken over, turning it into a space that felt like mine. I started cooking again, hosting dinners for friends and laughing with my children. Sylvia tried to stay in touch, but I kept my distance. I was cordial but cool. I'd forgiven her, but I hadn't forgotten. I knew she'd never change. I knew she'd always see me as the enemy, and I was okay with that. The first Christmas after Sylvia moved out was different. She came to dinner, but she was subdued, quiet. She didn't criticize my cooking. She didn't undermine my parenting. She just sat at the table and ate her meal in silence. At the end of the night, she pulled me aside. "Diana, I know I've made mistakes. I know I've treated you badly. I'm sorry." I looked at her. This woman who'd made my life a living hell for so long. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt tired. "Thank you, Sylvia," I said. "I appreciate that." It wasn't a full reconciliation. It was too raw, too complicated for that, but it was a start. I thought about everything I'd been through. The invasion of my home, the manipulation, the pain. I thought about the woman I'd been before. The woman who'd let herself be invisible. And I thought about the woman I'd become. A woman who set boundaries, who stood up for herself, who refused to be erased. I'd been through hell, but I'd come out the other side. I was stronger, wiser, and more whole than I'd ever been. I sat on my porch watching the sunset, my children playing in the yard, Derek's hand in mine. The world was full of possibility, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at home.